Hello guys, welcome back to John's Workshop. This is episode 14. It's going to be quite a quick one this week. It's just a bit of a workshop update really. I'm going to call this episode Workshop Update and then Exciting Times, and I'll come on to that in a moment. So I've been doing a few bits and bobs this week around the workshop, and I'll show you some of that in a moment. There's been a few move arounds of bits of stuff, and I've been making some various different bits and pieces just in order to organise things a little bit better. So very quickly, I'm stood at the bench, as you'll see, and the whiteboard has moved from behind the lathe, and it's now up here by the bench, and that's its new home, and I think that's where it's going to stay. So that's sort of one move. What I'm doing with the whiteboard as well is I'm just using the top corner to start writing down bits of projects and stuff that I want to start doing. So there's a couple listed on there. So rear part-off tool post for the lathe, which I've already spoken about. Carriage stop for the lathe. You know, the lathe I've got doesn't have any carriage stop on it, so I want to make, well, two things really: a carriage stop and then also a DTI holder for the carriage as well, so that I can use that for depth stops. And then a bit removal tool for the Taylor Hobson pantograph engraving machine. So there's a bit stuck in the spindle at the moment. It's been in there since I bought it, and it's just I can't get it out. You just need to. It's very simple. Bit of flat plate with a V in the front, just to twist the tool to remove it from the taper. Now it's been in there a long time, so I would imagine it might be corroded in. So I'll just move the camera around in a couple of places and show you what I've been up to in terms of just workplace organisation a little bit this week and what I've been doing, and a plan for tomorrow. I'm going to build another bench, a very small one at the side of the bench here, probably only sort of 400mm deep, something like that. And I think what I'm going to use that for is the grinder that will sit on that, so that it's not on the main bench. And also I've looked at my two record vices that I've got, and I'll show you those in a minute. One of them's stripped down completely. I've done a bit of a strip down on it, ready for paint and ready for rebuild. That's the worst one of the two, so I'm going to use that on this bench, and I'll use that for sort of welding or whatever. So if it's not precision and the vice doesn't matter so much, I'll use that one. I've got another record vice that I'll show you in a moment that was my great uncle's, so it's got some history to it. It's in very good condition. It just needs a strip down, and I shall do what I've done with the other one, which I'll show you shortly. So I'll bring you back in a moment, just reposition the camera, and I'll run you through some of the stuff I've done. So we're at the bench now. I've got the Ultrasonic Cleaner going again. I'm just going to show you what I'm doing with that first, because it's the stuff that's in there is ready to come out, so we'll do that first. What I did do some time ago now is I bought off eBay. I kept my eye on a few auctions, and there were a couple that didn't sell particularly quickly, and they kept getting relisted, and I just kept putting cheeky bids in, and eventually I won. So I won a whole load of reamers. There's Morse taper shank, there's straight shank, there's hand reamers, there's all sorts in the mix. There's about 40 or 50 reamers, and I think I paid £16 or something, and £3 postage. So it's a decent haul of reamers really. But you'll see the state of them, and I'm not coming too close because this camera doesn't have any sort of focus on it. So they're absolutely red rusty. They're in a sort of terrible state really, but it's only surface rust most of it. So what I'm doing is I've done a load already, and I'll just show you those. So I've done this is my third or fourth eBay purchase of these reamers. So these are all the ones that have been through the wash already. So there's quite a lot of reamers in there. I don't know, there's probably 40, 50, 60 reamers. Some of them are ones that I've had for a long time, others are the ones that came off eBay. Various different sizes, up to about, I don't know, 20mm, 3/4 of an inch, that sort of size, right down to sort of 2mm sort of size. A lot of them are imperial, various different imperial sizes, but useful set of reamers, and all I'm doing is as I'm putting these ones through the wash, I'm giving them a bath of oil and then dropping them into the box. So that's one of the things that's been going on this week. So I'll just drop those back in there. So I've been having a bit of an organise of the toolbox as well. Let me just pan down a little bit so you can see. So, you know, in this drawer I've got my drill sets, different drill sets. This was another Lidl's purchase. Again, it's Parkside stuff, so it's not the cheapest of the cheap, but it's certainly not industrial quality. But these were in Lidl's, and I just saw it and thought, I'll grab that. It wasn't particularly expensive, so it's a set of metric taps and the correct tapping drills to go with them, and a tap wrench as well. You know, they're not going to be brilliant, but they're certainly going to be good enough for a few uses. I would say in soft materials they'll be absolutely fine. So I've had those for a long time. Bought them out of Lidl's ages and ages ago. Centre drills here. So a whole load of centre drills, ranging from, you know, the ridiculous size, massive things, down to tiny ones. The sort of sets of step drills that I showed you before in the packet, they've been taken out of the packet now. I've actually been using those to drill just some wood, and I'll show you what I've been doing with those as part of some racking and shelving that I've been building. Let me just pan back up to the bench just before we get these reamers out. You'll see there, this is the record vise. So this again was an eBay purchase, same sort of deal. It was on and off, relisted, and I think I paid somewhere in the region of about £20 for it, something like that. So it's a record number 2. I've completely stripped it. It was red when it came, so it's been stripped down, well, just stripped. It's been stripped as a unit, and then it's been wire brushed over all the painted surfaces. It's got back to its original blue. It's very dull because it needs, you know, it's been wire brushed, so that's ready for paint. I've been over all the surfaces and taken any high spots off with a file. So that's all ready for paint now. It's in fairly good condition. I've had all the small parts of that vise through the Ultrasonic Cleaner, so the jaws, the lead screw nut or the thread nut, springs, washers, screws, that kind of thing. So they're just sat in a bath of oil at the minute after they've been through the wash machine, ready for a quick wipe down and a rebuild once I've got everything painted. Again, this is the main base unit, same deal. It's been wire wheeled everywhere. I've took a file to it where it needed it, you know, to take any high spots and bruises off, so that's all ready for paint now. And of the two vices, that, you know, this is the one in the worst condition, and most of the damage is on this piece, and it's towards the end here. You can see the corner's been fretted away. This will be where somebody's been banging and bashing on this top surface, trying to use it as an anvil, I would imagine. But you know, it's only minor damage, so it'll make a decent vise. The actual shaft and thread is in good condition. That's not been cleaned yet. That's in its original state, so that needs a wire wheel down and a clean up. So that's all ready for paint, and I've got some record blue. Well, it's Smooth-Right, Hammerite Smooth-Right, but it's similar shade of blue. So that vise will be getting done at some point when that paint arrives. And then the other vise, it's exactly the same vise. It's a record number 2, and that's here. It's not screwed to the bench yet. It's just sat on top loosely at the minute. This is my great uncle's vise. It's in incredibly good condition. You know, I've had it for probably 20 years, and it's going to get the same treatment. So I'll fully strip it, wire wheel it. This is kind of it's had 2 colours on it. It's kind of a greeny colour originally, and then a gold colour on top of that. We'll get all of that off and we'll put it back to the blue, same blue as the other vise when we get to that point. I'll just switch the ultrasonic cleaner off and I'll show you these reamers. These have been in for about an hour and a half, something like that, with some of the corrosion removal chemical on there. So I'll just get these out. paper. So this is post the ultrasonic treatment. Let's give it a quick wipe, and these will be going in a bath of oil. So, you know, there's a comparison. That's so similar size reamers. So the top one is the before condition, and the bottom one is the after condition. So you know, the ultrasonic cleaner does a really good job. It gets rid of all the rust and oxidisation on the surface. So that'll make a useful addition to the reamer set. And you can see there that's had some. Now I've got the rust off. I can see that's been hand marked 11.3 millimeters. So they're all sort of oddball sizes, some of them, but you know, if you're making the pins to fit, it doesn't really matter. So they're a useful set. So I'll deal with those reamers shortly. Now they're out of the tank. In fact, what I'm going to do just for now, I'll just drop them back in there so that they don't flash over. We'll leave them in the liquid until I've stopped filming this section. So that's those small updates. In terms of what I've been making, if I go down to this drawer, and we'll just show you in there. So these are the ER32 collets that I've put through the wash, and you saw that on the last episode. So I've made a rough and ready rack to stand them all in. The nut is just loose on there at the minute, that's a spare. I've also got a set of ER11 collets that I bought, and these are import stuff. I've never used them, so I've got this full set of collets from 1mm up to 6, I think it is, and an ER11 holder that I bought with them. So that's in there, that's never been out of the packaging. The original intention with that was I was going to adapt the Taylor Hobson engraving machine to take this ER11 so that I could put not only the engraving bits in that have got a Taylor Hobson taper, but I could put anything in there. But that's maybe a future project. So that's what I've been up to here. You'll be pleased to know that I've finally ditched the claw hammer that you've seen me using. I've managed to find at least one of my proper engineering hammers. So that's just for now. That's resting in there. I've actually ordered some soft hammers as well because I don't know where mine have gone. I just can't find them. They were old anyway. So I've ordered a couple of soft dead blow hammers that will be coming. So that's one rack that I've been making this week. I'll spin you round. Apologies for the noise on the tripod. Quick one behind the bandsaw. Up there I've fixed up onto the wall there. That's the table for using the bandsaw in vertical mode. I've not fitted that yet, and it needs beefing up anyway. These things are really flimsy. So I'll need to do a bit of work on that when I do want to use it, but it's up there on the wall behind the bandsaw. The bandsaw's moved slightly to the right of where it was, only by a few inches probably, and there's a reason behind that, and I'll tell you what that is in a moment, and that sort of goes towards the exciting times title of the video. So you'll see here, guys, I've fitted my crane unit to the RSJ. It's not the original design I did with lots of angle iron and bolted joints. I've gone for a much simpler design. Well, basically I've just used 4 clamps, and I've just basically clamped it through the threaded holes to the girder. I think that'll be fine. It's very rigid. It's not going anywhere. What I have done is I've wired it all in. So I've run a new wire in here. Unfortunately, the plug that came with it, the lead to the plug, is only about 600 millimeters long, something like that. So I've had to run an extension lead in just to another plug at the socket there, which I've done. Now, one thing with this crane, and it's a good job I read the instructions on this, so if anybody else buys one of these units, this was from Aldi's, and I think I said in a previous video I've had it for about 10 years. And it's just sat in the box for 10 years, it's never been used. What I didn't know with this crane is, originally this this shackle here was in a bag in the box, and there was just the standard crane hook just hanging down, and I just happened to see the safe working load written on the crane hook here, and it said 125 kilograms. Now the unit itself is rated to 250 kilograms, so that made me scratch my head. So I went and got the booklet out and started reading through it. And the reason for that is it's to do with the cable itself, and you fit this secondary unit. You clip the first hook up to the body of the crane up here, and what that then gives you is, and I've switched it on. You've now got two cables supporting the load as opposed to just the one, so that's how it doubles up from 125 up to 250, and this has just got a roller in there for the wire to roll round, so that's good. I've put that in a particular position on the girder, and I'll talk about that. So it's where I'm going to need it next, and it's configured for 250 kilograms. So what might I want to be lifting that's 250 kilograms? Well, you'll see the space, and that's why the saw's moved over slightly to the right. I've cleared a big space there now between the saw and the lathe. And the exciting news is I've placed an order for a milling machine. So the milling machine's the mill's going to sit in this space here. The crane has been strategically positioned so that I can use it for the build of the mill when the mill comes, because there's going to be bits to lift up on top of the base and all the rest of it. I need to plan that, and when it comes I'll have to see how it's sort of broken down into its parts in the box, and plan how I'm going to assemble it and lift it, and I'll do all that on video with you guys. So there's a competition running now, and there's no prizes unfortunately, because John's workshop is completely out of funds at this point. So the competition is for all my subscribers to have a guess at what mill it's going to be. So based on previous videos and previous discussions I've had, I've spoken about 3 or 4 different sort of machine tool suppliers and 3 or 4 different potential mills, so I'll be interested to see what kind of comments we get back. I'm going to keep it, I'm not going to let on in this video what it is. We'll keep that as a bit of a surprise for when it actually turns up, and I'll take you through the sort of unboxing again and the build of it. So that's that. Other updates, the lathe itself, the reason the whiteboard is moved is because I've built this shelf. So this is just a shelf up here. I've got some big Morse taper stuff at the back, drills and various bits and pieces. I've got all my revolving centres, dead centres, that kind of thing down this side. And then this is a bit of PVC cladding for fascias. I've got a bit left over from when I clad the garage door, when I put a new garage door on. And what I've done there is I've just upturned it and screwed it to the wooden base. The idea being that all of my quick release tool holders there now can sit on that plastic, and if I happen to just knock something, they're not all going to come falling off and all over the lathe. It was just to put a step there really for the tool holders to keep them where they need to be. In other news on the lathe, what I've also done is, I'll just pan down to the lathe. We'll just zoom in on the tool post. So this tool post is the original one that came with the lathe, and I found that it had a bit of surface rust on the underside, so we just dressed that off with a bit of Scotch-Brite. I fitted the tool post, and I've got a high-speed steel sort of blade type parting off tool in there, and what I did earlier was just stuck a bit of mild steel in the chuck, and I thought I'll just try parting off with this tool post as opposed to the quick release one that I was having the issues with before, and it was like a knife through butter, straight through, no bother at all. So all of the parting off issues I've been having, and some of my subscribers hinted towards this, where I thought it was the flatness issue, which I've still got to fix by the way. There is a flatness issue on this top of this compound, but all of the parting off issues I was having was with this cheap, I would imagine it's Chinese copy of a Dixon tool post. So this was the cause of all the trouble I was having with the parting off. So this is fine for turning. It doesn't seem to have much bother up when I'm turning with it, but and it is easier than the standard tool post, because with this you've got to be putting shims under all your tools to get them to the right centre height and all the rest of it, which is a bit of a faff. So I'll keep this one for turning. I'll keep this one for parting off just in the short term until I've built my rear parting off tool post, and we'll do some work with the compound slide at some point as well. So that's really the update on the lathe. So I've been busy making various bits of racking and shelving and things like that. I'm quite pleased with that. It's out of the way, it's just in the right position when I'm operating the lathe, that it's not in the way but everything's to hand. So that's good. So that's really kind of the updates. There's a couple of jobs I'm going to probably do tomorrow. I'm going to be building, just bear with me while I spin around, I'll just go back up the other end. I'm going to be building the bench, as I've said previously, to fit here, a small bench, tomorrow, and I'm also going to address the issue I've got with the Eclipse DTI stand on the surface table. So I'll film some of that and put that in this episode as well. So I'll bring you back when we're getting into those jobs tomorrow. Just a quick sort of addendum to what I was talking about earlier in terms of workshop updates. So I've been doing some research, and apologies for the flickering, that it's still ongoing, and that's going to be ongoing for a while. But I thought I'd just share very briefly with you the research that I've done and why I'm getting the flickering, because it may help someone else who's got similar sort of issues. So and I'm not an electrician, so I'm going to do my best with this. Alright, so we're in the UK, so our electricity supply is 50 hertz. So, and that's, would help if I could draw, wouldn't it? So 50 hertz, which is basically 50 cycles a second. So what that means is the electricity flows in one direction for a 50th of a second and then back the other way for a 50th of a second, and that's how alternating current works, and that's what the alternating means. The electricity is flowing backwards and forwards. So the reason I'm getting this flickering on the camera, because I've gone to LED lights, they are classed as a digital light, and a digital sine wave looks like this. Sorry, a digital sine wave. A digital power wave looks like this. So it's basically zeros and ones, where that's 0 and that's 1, and the lights are either on or off. So as you get these 50 cycles a second, it's on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, and at that frequency it's fixed. My camera, and I've been through all the settings on it, as well as it not having any kind of focus at all, so I can't focus in on close-up stuff, so that's why I struggle to do close-ups. It also, the only frame rates I've got are either 30 frames a second or 60 frames a second. They're the only two options I've got, 30 and 60. Now if I'd got a camera that could do 25 frames a second, because the electricity is going at 50 hertz, you wouldn't get this shimmering, because it's a multiple of 50. And equally, if I could get a camera that would do 100 frames a second, which is unlikely, but I'm sure there's some very expensive ones that can do that, again, there would be no issue. So the issue I've got isn't with the lighting, it's with the camera. So what I need to do is get another camera. So I'm sure this camera I've got would work fine in the US, because I think the US frequency is 60 cycles a second, so it would be fine and you wouldn't get this sort of shimmering. But certainly in the UK it's no good, so I need to get myself a new camera. Basically, I would imagine it will be 25 frames a second is the sort of rate that I'd go for. So I'm looking out for a camera now that I can replace this one with, that's got 25 frames per second or 50 frames a second, either or, and also the option to be able to focus manually or autofocus. The camera I've got doesn't even have an autofocus, it's just got a fixed focal length the whole time, so that's why when I do try and do close-ups of stuff, it's always a little bit blurry because it's just not, it won't focus in. So sorry for the maths lesson, but that's the story behind the shimmering, but at least now I understand it. That makes sense to me, makes perfect sense. So and obviously with the news I've just given you about me purchasing a mill and also various bits and pieces I need to go with the mill as well, there's a lot more to get yet, and I'll have to do that over time, but funds are not very healthy at the moment, so that's just going to have to wait. So unfortunately you're stuck with the shimmering, guys, and apologies for that. What I have noticed is when I'm pointing at like this, which is a white wall where there's lots of white, you see more of it. If I point at a surface that's duller, that's not reflecting the light so much, you don't see as much of it. So what I'll try and do is keep the films, as I get more into machining and stuff like that, I'll try and pick my shots so that they're against darker surfaces if I can, to try and cut down on this shimmering, because it annoys me when I'm watching the videos back. So I'm kind of stuck with it, and apologies, but at least I now understand it, and I've got a plan to fix it, and that will come in due course. So I'll bring you back when we're into the building of the bench, which is just going to go just here, and also fixing the DTI stand, as I spoke about in the last video. Hi guys, well it's Sunday, and I've managed to do a sum total of neither of the two jobs that I was planning to do for this episode. One was the DTI holder behind me, and the other one was the small bench that I was going to make. So apologies for that, it's just all talk on this episode, unfortunately. So I got distracted, and the reason I got distracted was I was looking at the DTI holder, and I was looking at maybe putting a small grub screw in there, a tiny fine thread grub screw to nip the bar in, where it's slack, because at the moment it's just too sort of slack and it spins round, so I need to do something with it. And I thought I've got some grub screws somewhere, so I started searching through stuff that I've still to unpack and all that kind of thing, looking for grub screws. Where that finished up was, I thought, well, while I'm at it, I might as well start sorting a few things out, and one thing led to another. So what I've been up to today, and I'll just spin you around, Mrs. John's workshop kindly gave me this drawer unit. It's a metal case with plastic drawers, and I've been through all of that now, and I've gone through all my taps, metric taps and dies at least. All my imperial ones are still away. So I've now segregated, each drawer, and I have to get a label marker to mark up the drawers so I know what's in what. But basically, I don't know whether this will show, but so this is M5s and M6s, so M5 taps and dies and M6 taps and dies in there. So I've been right through the whole thing, and I've set out all my sort of taps and dies. At the moment I'm just using the bottom drawer for all the small sort of tap wrenches and die stops, and then the set of drawers next to it, I've had those for years and years and years. Again, it's a metal case, actually made in Canada, I found out as I started trying to clean it up, which is unusual. I bought those probably 25 years ago. The bottom section down here had actually, the bottom set of drawers had come away from the casing, so the spot welds had given way. It's where it's been stood on a damp floor and it's just rusted. And I was close to throwing it away, and I thought, no, I'm spending enough money at the moment, so I'm going to rescue it. I've got a workshop, that's the whole idea. So I've basically drilled through from the back and just put a couple of little pop rivets in, and it's fine, it's back together. Given it all a clean, and basically what I've gone through here now is, so it's all metric, nuts, bolts and washers basically. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 and 16 cap heads and bolts, and then the same thing again, M2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 and 16 threaded nuts, and then the same thing again, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 and 16, and that's all sort of washes and spring washes. So that's what I've been doing today, just going through all of that kind of stuff, just trying to get that all organised. As I was going through all of this stuff, I found some incredibly small taps, which are interesting. So I'm just going to measure one of these up because I'm not quite sure what size they are. The shank is so small that I can't read the writing on. So we'll just get one out, and it's a shame my camera doesn't focus close in, but so there's one of them. I'm just going to pop that in the vise, so I'll spin you around so you can see what I'm up to. There we go. And the vise still isn't fixed to the bench yet, but for what I'm doing here it won't matter. So we'll just pop that in there, and I'm just going to get my vernier and we'll just measure that and see what size it is. Right, so there we go. We'll just measure this. We'll just measure this. Oh, it's moved. That's 1mm. M1. I don't fancy tapping stainless steel with those. Anyway, that was a bit of a giggle. What I have done though, and the reason I brought that in as a bit of a laugh, is I've freed that up. You know, it was sort of corroded solid. I've only managed to free up the first sort of, I don't know, 200mm of travel. The rest of it needs some work. You can see there's some surface rust on there, but I will have a go at that, and I don't know where I'm going to end up with that. I probably won't go all the way down, it's just far too long. But I just couldn't bear to see that getting rustier and rustier, so we've given that a bit of a clean up. I'll just pop that back. So yeah, M1. I didn't know I'd got them. I've no idea where I picked those up. So 1mm taps. So should I ever need to tap something 1mm, I'm sorted. Anyway, that was a long way round and a bit of fun around basically just saying that I have now finally organised all my taps and dies. What else I've done is I was going through my old set of drawers, and I'll show you this. And I showed this yesterday. I'll just spin you down to my collet rack. As I was going through my my drawer set, I found, where is it? This, which is a Kennametal collet holder. I think it goes up to 6mm. I'm not sure of I don't even know the denomination of the collets, if I'm honest with you. I don't know I can't even remember what they're called. They're not ER collets. But what I've done is, it's a reasonable holder. You know, it's going to be far better quality than this Chinese ER11 thing that I bought, and I've looked at some of the ER11 collets that I've put across the bottom here, and my camera won't show it because it's too, it just won't focus, but where the hole exits the back of the collet, I'm sure I could have drilled a hole blindfolded and got it more central than what they are. They're absolutely shocking. I think they'll probably end up finding their way into the bin at some point, and I'll buy a decent set. But I've got this Kennametal holder, and what you'll probably just about be able to see, hopefully, I'll just try and zoom you in a little bit. What I've done there is, in between the big ER32 collets, I've put some small holes in there, and I've got a full set going from 1mm up to 6mm to fit that Kennametal holder. So again, it's all been about sort of, this whole episode is all about organisation and just trying to get myself sorted. So that's a bit more work that I've been doing. I've also sourced back out of the shed the offcut of marine ply, which is there, and that's what I'll be using to make the small bench that's going to go across this way, that I shall have my offhand grinder set on there, the vice that I'm in the middle of repairing and bringing back to life, and those things will be on there is the plan. And I might even leave it at this full width just to save me again cutting this thing down to width, so it's a bit wider than what I was going for, but I think this stuff's so difficult to cut. I actually burnt out 2 half-inch router bits just cutting the original bench wood from out of the 8x4 sheet. It's so hard, and I've got no other, I don't have a circular saw or a tabletop saw or anything, so there's no other way of me cutting this stuff. It's so hard, so I'll probably go with this width and just make the bench. I've just got to cut it to length then and make some legs for it. So that's what I've been doing with that. So that's really the updates. I'll just spin you back around. That's really the updates for the end of this episode. So apologies, there's been no machining or anything like that in this episode. I did hope to have done a bit with the bench or a bit with the DTI holder, but anyway. So just to wrap this up for this week, as I said earlier, there's a bit of a competition in terms of what mill that I've bought. I'm looking forward to its imminent arrival. I think that'll be coming hopefully, if not next week, the week after. I think it will take a couple of weeks to come through. It's a 3-phase milling machine, so that might be a bit of a clue. So what I'd like you guys to do is have a guess. Have I gone with an Asian import? Have I gone with Cormac again? Have I gone with an older machine like a Bridgeport or something like that, or a different type of mill? And the 3-phase might be a bit of a clue, it might not. So, and the first person to, there's no prizes because I'm skinned, so the first person to guess correctly will get a shout out on the next video for guessing which mill I've gone for. So and I'll take you through, obviously I need to put 3-phase power in for the mill, and I'll take you through in more detail my thinking around what I've gone for. So I'll tell you now, I've gone for a converter, a static converter, as opposed to a VDF, no, a VFD, yeah, VFD, variable frequency drive. So I've gone for a static converter, which is sort of old school. It's got power capacitors in it for surge when you start and things like that. But the reason I've done that is because I've done a lot of research again, and various people have got VFDs and they've had issues with them. Again, they're typically Asian import stuff. The power, sort of the static power converter that I've bought for 3-phase is made in the UK. It's by a reputable company. They've been on the go for years and years and years making 3-phase converters, and I've just got a lot more confidence in going for something that's old school and that I know is going to work. So, and what it'll also give me the option of doing is, if I buy another machine or something else at some point in the future that's also 3-phase, I don't need to buy another VFD. All I've got to do is pull the plug out of the transformer unit, put the plug in for whatever else, and I've got 3-phase power up to, I think it's 3.5 horse. So that's the way I've gone, and I'll probably go into a bit more detail on that. So all talk this week. Apologies for that, guys. So I'm going to wrap it up at this, and I'll go and try and stitch all this together and make it into some kind of an episode with some continuity in it. So again, thanks for watching. I'm dead excited that the mill's coming finally, and I'll take you through that whole journey of unboxing the lifts that I'm going to need to do to get the mill into place and into position, and that's hopefully the crane's going to help with some of that. But there's going to be a lot of pallet trucks and blocks and pallets and things like that I'm going to need to do, and I'm sure Mrs. John's workshop will be asked to come and help out at some point. So, but hopefully that will probably not be next week's episode. It will probably be the week after. So for next week's episode, I'm going to try and get myself, now I'm a bit more organised, get myself a couple of jobs lined up to do, either on the lathe or building the bench or whatever it is. Just something a bit more sort of engineering focused and a bit more interesting. So thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you all on the next episode.